I want to pick a really fun one. F of x equals x squared minus x. That one looks like lots of fun. So what I want to do now is I want to find f of, okay, I want to evaluate f of x plus delta x minus f of x all over delta x. Does that look like fun?
No.
Okay, here's what I need you to understand. You really, really have to focus on this example. You cannot skip these types of problems. This is like the basis of all of calculus right here. I just have to tell you, this is the basis for all of calculus right here. It'll be explained later more, like how it's related to calculus, but in order to be able to work with the calculus level of this, you have to be able to work with the algebra level of this. So that's what we're teaching you right now. The algebra, how to do the algebra of this, which seems horrible. You know how to do this though. This is simply composite functions. All right? So we are given this. This is always what you're given in your problem. You'll be given that problem, and in the directions it will say evaluate this. Okay. First thing you need to know, what is delta x? This is red, delta x. Delta x, the change in x. Now, people get so confused about this, and they think that delta and x are two separate variables. These are inseparable. This is like, it would be the same as just writing b. That's the same as a single variable. Okay, delta x is a single variable. A single variable. Even though you're going to argue and say, well, no, it's got a delta and an x. Okay, it's a single variable. So just some rules in dealing with delta x. If I take delta x plus delta x, what does that equal? It's 2 delta x's. Okay, if I take delta x times delta x, that's delta x squared. If I take and multiply x times delta x, that's
X delta x.
it's x times delta x. Just think of it, what's x times y? How do you multiply two things that are different, totally different? You just write them next to each other. Delta x is nothing like x. Okay? So these are just some operations that should help you with dealing with delta x. Delta x is not that bad. It looks bad. Okay? So, knowing that, how am I going to evaluate this? Now here's what I need to think. I need to think of this as 3 separate parts that I'm going to find and then put all together and do this big subtraction and then division problem. I have to take this, which I need to find based on whatever function I'm given. See, in different problems, your f of x may not be x squared minus x. Your f of x might just be something like x minus 2. Your f of x might be something like the square root of x plus 1. So depending upon your f of x, this will be different. Okay? This you find first because it's the hardest, the ugliest. Get it out of the way. What is this really? Right here. What's that? Isn't that the function they give you? So whatever they give you for the function is going to go right there. And then this is just delta x. We have to divide by that. So what we need to do to evaluate something, you need to plug things in. That's the first step of evaluating. We're going to plug things in. Then we're going to get rid of parentheses, combine like terms, and do any other type of simplifying we need to. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to find is this. Then we're going to plug it all into here and work it out. So number 1, I'm just going to find f of x plus delta x. And I strongly recommend you just do this first and separate. So f of x plus delta x means take my f of x, which was x squared minus x, and what am I going to replace each of those x's with?
F of x. X plus what delta change of x.
X plus delta x.
Yeah.
See, what did x change to? Here it was just x. Now it's x plus delta x. So each of these x's is going to get replaced with x plus delta x minus x plus delta x. Notice my parentheses? That's very important or you're going to screw up all the negatives. So now, I've plugged it in. Now I need to simplify this. Simplifying consists of getting rid of parentheses, combining like terms. How do I get rid of these parentheses? No, how, not what, how. It is factored. Factoring is putting parentheses in. FOIL. FOIL. So I need to take x plus delta x times x plus delta x minus each of those. That's after. Okay, so let's FOIL this. First two. X times x. X squared. Okay, outer. X delta x. We talked about what that is over here. Inner. X delta x. Always write the x in front of the delta x. Always. Then delta x squared. Now, when I'm subtracting this, I'm subtracting each part. So it becomes minus x minus delta x. Okay, I'm almost done simplifying whatever f of x plus delta x is. So, what goes with x squared? Does any of these terms go with x squared? No, none of them are like it. Delta x squared is not at all like it. Delta x squared is like a completely other variable. Okay, what goes with x delta x? Okay, x delta x plus x delta x is 2x delta x. All right, what goes with delta x squared? Nothing. And nothing goes with these two. So this right here is f of x plus delta x. Now, am I done? No, because now that is only this part of what I have to evaluate. So now I'm going to, this is what I have to find here. I have to figure out what f of x plus delta x minus f of x, I'm going to do that next. So first I found this, now I'm going to simplify the top. So I've got my f of x plus delta x. Okay, now I'm going to subtract from it the f of x. So what's f of x? So I'm going to subtract my original function, which is x squared minus x. So that's that. That big mess is my f of x plus delta x. Okay, so now when I subtract each of these, what happens? You add the opposite of each. So now I need to combine the like terms. Okay, what happens with x squared and negative x squared?
It becomes x.
No, what's x squared minus x squared?
0.
It is 0. So now, does this term 2x delta x go with anything?
No.
No, it doesn't. So I write 2x delta x. Okay, that go with anything? No. Does negative x go with anything?
It goes with positive x.
And they?
0. No.
And that is negative delta x. All right, so now what part have I completed now? What part of this have I completed? This is everything on the top. So now what do I divide all that by? I divide all that by delta x. Okay, we're almost done. What can I factor out of the top? Factor the top now. Okay, I can factor out a delta x. Pay attention, please. When I factor out a delta x from the top, what's left in here when I get rid of the delta x? 2x. What's left here when I get rid of one of the delta x's? Okay, plus delta x. Delta x squared means delta x and delta x. You take one of them out, it's still delta x, just not squared. And what comes out? What's left here? Minus 1. Is that important?
Yes.
Yes. It's not 0. You can't multiply, when you factor, if you factor out and have 0 left, you're wrong. Okay, now the bottom is what?
Delta x.
And what happens to the delta x that you factored out and the one on the bottom? So your final answer for this is?
2x plus delta x minus 1.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm gonna get the minus x minus delta x.
Right there?
On the up one more?
Right there?
Yeah, where'd you get that?
Where did I get that from? This?
Yeah, the minus x and minus delta.
Okay, because I took, are you talking about like right here?
Yeah, I understand how you got the first part.
You understand how I got that? This part comes from distributing that right through there, which is then transferred just down here.